Hello friends, nothing weird here. And in today's video, I'd like to talk about some new info that just recently came out about Battlefield 6. More specifically, how they're approaching class design for this title. I know lots of people will want to know, so I'll just preface this video by saying I've been around long enough that I was absolutely blown away when they showed Battlefield 1942 at E3 back in 2002. Yes, I'm old. I'm only telling you this for the context of I'm not new to the franchise. I've been here and seen every iteration of it. It doesn't mean my arguments or ideas have any more merit, but for some reason, it's an important point for many people arguing design and balance ideas for this franchise. That being said, let's go ahead and get into the main thing I'd like to discuss. So recently, on the Battlefield subreddit, there was an official post from Battlefield Labs detailing some features and balancing changes they've already done due to feedback. So the big one that a lot of people are talking about, and that seems the most controversial, is the fact that once again, they are not doing class-locked weapons. Now, technically, they had already announced this a couple of months ago, but here they're doubling down on this decision. Now, a lot of people aren't happy about this, but actually, I'm not bothered by it. I actually like this change. Now, DICE's explanation for why they made this change was that many people would choose a specific class just to have access to that class's weapon. So, theoretically, by opening up weapon selection, you should see more class variety. I've seen the arguments about how this is going to absolutely ruin the game for all sorts of reasons, but I honestly think it's all fairly overblown. I'm not saying it's a wrong opinion to prefer class-locked weapons, but some of the arguments just don't convince me. One of the constant ones I see brought up is what's to stop a sniper from sitting across the map and sniping for eternity by constantly dropping ammo for himself? But honestly, snipers already do that. Sure, they can't drop ammo for themselves, but they do put down a respawn beacon, slowly go through their ammo, and then assuming they're either not killed or a support player doesn't spawn on their beacon and drop them ammo anyways, he'll just respawn back on his beacon. So basically, it's the same problem reached with different steps, except the sniper class is more effective at it. I've also seen the argument that if everyone has the same access to the same weapons, everyone will just choose assault rifles, thus killing any variety and creating a very boring meta. This already kind of happens in a lot of the games anyways, except everyone's forced to choose whichever class has it, regardless of if they want to play that class. So I look at it this way. People will already do this, except it hurts class variety. So given the choice, I would choose class variety over weapon variety. But I also think that if everyone has access to all the weapons, then they're more incentivized to balance them better. So theoretically, with class-locked weapons, you could make the assault rifle the best overall gun, because the class that it belonged to was weak with gadgets, and having the best gun helped make up for it. But with open access for everyone, that line of thinking for balancing weapons goes out the window. Another argument I see in favor of opening up weapons is that Battlefield 4 mostly did that already, and it worked perfectly fine. I don't see any detriments to allowing the expanded selection in Battlefield 4, and I don't see how adding a few more all of a sudden ruins the entire game. And I know not everyone makes that exaggerated argument, but I've seen enough. Another example, and this is just from watching leaks on Reddit, I definitely wasn't in any of the weekend stress tests and got to play for a few days. Anyways, it's very cool to pick the Pathfinder subclass for recon and grab a decked out silenced submachine gun and work your way behind enemy lines to plant a spawn beacon for your team, to pull off a flank or capture a much needed flag. I just love that that's an option. I don't see how forcing recon to use a carbine instead of SMG is core Battlefield, but allowing the use of an SMG is somehow going to ruin the entire game, or even hurt the balance. The game will be balanced around the idea of allowing all weapons for all classes, and I think it will help balance overall between guns instead of hurting them. I also don't think any classes will suffer from this, so much as allowing more classes to flourish, not being forced to use a weapon that doesn't necessarily make sense for the particular map or objective. Plus, going back to the Labs post, they have a very cool idea to buff the class's signature weapon, so while the classes do have access to all weapons, they are at least incentivized to use their class-defining signature weapon. Nothing is set in stone yet, it's still technically an alpha, so things can definitely change, but this is what they have so far. The assault class, of course, gets the assault rifles as their signature weapon, and they get faster sprint-to-shoot speeds and faster weapon switching between assault rifles and other weapons. Engineers get improved hipfire control for submachine guns. Support doesn't suffer from sprint speed penalties with LMGs. I'm not even sure what that one means. I guess you sprint slightly slower with LMGs? I don't know, that one's kind of lame. I hope they do something a little bit better than that. And then Recon gets reduced scope sway, better holding your breath, and faster rechambering between shots. I think this kind of system was a very cool compromise to still reward you for using the class's signature weapon, but without completely taking away your ability to use the others. The next thing they talked about were classes' signature traits, and also what they're calling training paths. So basically, each match you start at level 0 and work your way up to level 3, which unlocks what I'd call an ultimate ability for your class. You obviously start at level 0, and then level up through team play progression and score XP. So basically just playing the game, but maybe unlocked a little faster if you're better at your role. And the example given here is the level 3 for the Recon, which is a UAV which spawns in a spot of your choosing and also grants passive spotting, but it can also be destroyed. And having definitely not used it myself, I can say that it's a nice little extra during certain moments, but wasn't overpowered and didn't stick around too long to upset balance. It was just a nice bonus to be able to use occasionally. Now what they're calling training paths, I would almost just call a subclass. But the example given here is for the Recon, where you can choose either Sniper or Pathfinder. And here's a list of what each unlocks at each level. I'm personally not for all these abilities that spot enemies for you, because then it feels like you spend most of the game with Doritos over your head, and being on everyone's map. But we'll have to see how they balance that. One I think is particularly interesting is the level 2 Sniper ability, where headshots with sniper rifles fully kill the target, making him unable to be revived. In the test I definitely didn't play, and never felt too much or too often, but we'll have to wait and see how it feels once everyone better understands the system and starts taking advantage of it. But I do think it's a cool idea, and I'd like to see more stuff like this explored. My only real little pet peeve through all this, I don't like having to level up in every single match like that. I'd rather just have all the abilities given to me from the start, even if they have to rebalance them for that. But that's just personal preference. They also went into class gadget details, and some of the changes they've already made to certain classes after a decent amount of testing in labs. First, the gadgets. So the Assault class gets one of those annoying injection abilities that seems to be in every single game now. But, thankfully, they've removed the healing properties from it. So now you at least need a medic again if you want quick heals. But the injection gives him resistance to stun and flash grenades, along with enhanced sprint speed, and reduced explosive damage, while also bizarrely amplifying enemy footsteps briefly. I honestly don't like this gadget at all. It just does so much and seems ridiculous. And trying to have all that in one ability seems like a nightmare to balance. If they're going to keep the injector, then I'd rather only see flash and stun resistance with improved sprint speed. Or maybe even a completely different item that gives reduced explosive damage and amplified enemy footstep audio, like a helmet or a mask with a tactical headset that could also be seen by the enemies so they know when you're using it. Or heck, even just something as simple as slightly better ADS movement speed and sprinting for a longer duration. I'm just really not a fan of this gadget. I don't think it fits well into Battlefield, but it isn't a deal breaker for me. Now the change to the Engineer class I absolutely love, as you now always have access to a repair tool. So you no longer have to choose between doing what your class was meant to or using something a little more fun. This is a great change, and I imagine we'll see a lot more vehicles being repaired because of it. Support gets an ammo and medic bag combined into one, which I am very iffy on. It didn't seem crazy overpowered in the test I definitely wasn't in, but I was kind of hoping we'd go in the opposite direction and be getting more classes rather than less. I'm gonna have to put this in the wait and see category, because it wasn't as bad as I thought it might be, but it's also very early days to make a judgment call on it. And lastly, Recon gets a motion sensor, which if I'm being honest, I'm also not a big fan of. There's just so many ways to spot players in this game. It feels like you spend more time being spotted than not. Plus it's honestly just kind of boring to me. I'd rather see a different ability in place. Maybe one that could make it so you and teammates around you can't be spotted for a certain duration, or won't show up on minimaps, or something just more interesting than a motion sensor. Now on to the balancing changes. One I mentioned earlier is they've removed the healing effect from the injector, which is a very good change. They also removed the ability for Assault class to have 2 signature weapons, which I don't know if that means Assault class just can't carry 2 assault rifles, or it can't carry 2 full-size weapons at all. I guess we'll just have to wait and see when they do the open beta. But honestly, I hope no class gets the ability to carry 2 full-size weapons. That's just too much. Another crazy thing, talking about 2 full weapons, was Engineers had the ability to carry 2 separate rocket launchers, and was an absolute monster for dishing out vehicle or explosive damage. I honestly thought this one was a bug or just a silly oversight for the test that I definitely wasn't in, but apparently it was intended function. Thankfully they came to their senses and removed this. They're also looking into support crate spam, but honestly, I'm not sure how they'll fix this. But I am curious to see what changes they'll end up making. And they're looking at ways to improve recon. My personal hope, I'd like less easy spotting, and perhaps ways to prevent spotting, or perhaps other interesting ideas like being able to false capture a flag as a distraction, with maybe a drone or another unique item. Let's just hope it's not more spotting on top of spotting. And that's it for their post. I know not everyone's on board with all the changes, especially with the weapons being unlocked, but hopefully you can at least now see it from a different point of view. And maybe it doesn't seem as bad as you might have first thought. And also, don't let anyone tell you to stop talking about class-locked weapons. If you think it's bad for the game, then you're perfectly free to keep making the case for it. Especially because I know the reason you're even making the argument is because you love the franchise. So obviously don't go crazy with it, but hey, make yourself heard. And on that one, we'll just have to agree to disagree. And maybe I'll see 100 million of you in-game later. Yep, that one's not likely. But anyways, I am curious to see how this all plays out. And while class-locked weapons is definitely proven to be a divisive issue, I know in the end we all just want the same thing. An absolute return to form for the Battlefield franchise.